Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the 435 podcast. I'm your host, Robert McFarland. Over the next several episodes, guys, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the 2025 municipal elections. Mayors and city council members from all over Southern Utah are going to be seeking your vote in helping shape the future of our cities. So this is the place that you're going to be able to get one-on-one conversations with all the candidates to help you make the best decision for you come election season. So please make sure you like and subscribe, share it with other voters throughout Washington County, and make sure they have the information they need to make the decisions that are going to be best for us in the county. We hope you enjoy this episode and this series of episodes, guys. We'll see you out there.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
Rick Crow, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Thanks for being here. I'm doing good.
I appreciate it. What a great service you're providing.
I appreciate that. You're running for Hurricane City Mayor.
That's right.
Hurricane City. So, where are you from? How long have you been in Southern Utah? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
My wife and I have been here 5 years. We escaped California in the middle of the night in a U-Haul van.
Nice. A refugee.
With our masks on before they could catch us.
Yeah, I like it.
And we came here. Kind of a funny story. My wife, who doesn't make immediate decisions, she's very calculated.
Mm-hmm.
She's an executive. We went up to a friend's cabin in Duck Creek Village, and we passed this area. And she goes, "Oh, maybe, my kids were both in the military, and they told us, Dad, we're not coming back to California. Go find a free state, and we'll meet you there."
Yeah.
And so we were driving back home. She goes, "Let's go look at a couple houses over here." So we went up to a house in Dixie Springs, and she pulled up and she said, "What do you think this house costs?" I said, 1.2. She goes, "It's $445." I'm like, oh. We literally went to Cafe Sabora in St. George and rock, paper, scissored and bought a piece of property the next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
First time my kids saw it when they discharged from the military, my kids and my grandkids, was when they came over the hill from Cedar City. I picked their houses. We picked everything. They basically trusted me with everything.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Solid.
So that was in 2020.
Like 2020, I think we started building in 2019.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So did you immediately get kind of involved in the local politics and what was going on around here? Or do you have a past in that?
No, what we did, though, because at the time, it was "Don't California, my Utah." And,
yeah.
I asked people,
still is that way,
has anybody ever said "Don't New York" or "Don't Salt Lake" or "Don't Chicago, my Utah"? No, it's just Californian, right?
Yeah.
Most of the Californians I know that came here are solid red.
Yeah.
And so I was really active in the old community that I lived in. So we were immediately, and there was some fragment in our home in the tract that we live in Dixie Springs. There was a lot of conflict going on between HOA, ACC, and a bunch of people. And so immediately we were like, what can we do to make a positive impact in the community? And so we started we got here, I think, in September. We started a Christmas side-by-side parade.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing that now for, every year, and it's grown and grown and grown. We're up to almost 100 cars now. And so we do that. We do a Veterans Day flag walk. We do a Memorial Day ride up to the Fallen Trails up in Sand Hollow. So just basically tried to organize some things that bring the community together.
Nice. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
So what did you do for work? I mean, what was your past life?
So I've done a little bit of everything. I worked for a couple of Fortune 500 companies in a leadership role. I think one of the ones that really kind of fit into this role the best is I opened the first 30 Home Depot stores on the West Coast.
Oh, crazy.
And so we were always dealing with municipalities and homeowners and, people that didn't want it in the neighborhood, negotiating deals on how we can, fit in, assimilate into a neighborhood, bring it here. And my wife and I have owned a couple of small businesses. We owned a lubrication company. So just a little bit of everything, and I think gives me a solid overall background and a view from multiple sides.
Yeah. So kind of jumping into some of the specific questions that I have. So what do you think is the proper role of the municipal government, the city government? What's their proper role? Where do they fit in? What are they supposed to be doing?
Oh, man, that's tough because it would be nice if we didn't even need it, right?
Would be nice.
That's the first thing. We because when government gets involved, things slow down. It creates conflict. I don't know. I prefer to live back in the old West where we didn't have it, right?
Yeah.
You could just go out in the street and settle what you need to settle.
I don't know. I've seen some old Westerns and I'm like, man, it was pretty lawless. I don't know if that was the best
true.
environment.
Yeah. So I feel like from a government standpoint, it is to assist and serve constituents or citizens in whatever they need assistance with. Conflict resolution, instead of writing a law, it's mediation, that type of a thing. And, it's become necessary to have a strong city government because of the mandates that you get from the state and the federal government that come down. And I think it's just a go-between for the constituents and for the people to make sure that they're represented at, a state and federal level. Hopefully, from a city standpoint, not get in the way too much. So limited, very small government of a footprint as possible.
Yeah. So even at the city, local level. So how do you view that relationship? Where do you feel like the role of the city plays in like the state government and the federal government? Where do you see, those roles being played in, and maybe where are some things you see that you disagree with, how they interact?
I disagree with a lot of what the federal government and the state government tries to do at a local level. I don't think that they have the knowledge or the local presence to make decisions, and I feel like they make decisions based on maybe what they see at their level compared to what the boots on the ground would be. I'm not so sure that they make decisions from a state and a federal level. From a federal level, I don't think they make decisions in states properly, and from a state level, I don't think that they have enough knowledge really of southern Utah or Hurricane, let alone to be able to try to make decisions for us.
Is there any examples of that you think that you've seen or that you're kind of witnessing right now in the moment that there's some overreach there?
Well, I think housing. I think that anytime the federal government or the state government get involved in housing in a city, that's not a positive thing, right? They have a whole different outlook, and they have a different motive for why they want to grow compared to what the city wants to do. And I also think that they're disconnected and probably don't really care other than what their specific motive is. I'm not so sure they represent the people.
Yeah. Do you think that housing, where do you feel like the role of the city plays into that housing role, that as the government goes, like what should the city be doing just in terms of that one? I
think the city should, be allowed to make their own decisions on what's right for the city, and maybe at a county level, right? I miss the county level, right? Yeah. So I think, Washington County and the city should be the negotiation of how a city is developed. I think when it gets beyond the county level to the state and the feds, it's out of control. They have a whole different aspect. And they don't know the impact that's going on in our community. Yeah. And I know in Hurricane in general, we have SR9 right down the middle. So you don't have like a 50-50 split of property beside SR9, right? You have like 80% is to the south and 20% is to the north. And it already takes, an hour and a half on a Friday to get from the 15 to downtown Hurricane. So, my position would be on housing. We'll develop some more housing when you fix the main artery road that comes through our city. I mean, until that's addressed, we're just creating more and more havoc for our local constituents. Yeah. It's a tough, the traffic, because then who pays for it? How do they pay for it? The incentives, right? Show me the incentive, I'll show you the result, right? And so it's a tough thing to navigate. SR9, state route. Yeah. That's right. Not Hurricane's route, not a city route. So that's where that figuring out, okay, how do those relationships go? Is like when we're at the city, then we do have to go appeal up to the state level and say, hey, we do need this, right? And so that relationship requires, it requires a relationship, something that there's not a, we do it this way, you do it that way. But then when you need something, you're like, oh, well, we can't burn bridges, right? It requires there's a mutual understanding that we're doing this together, right? And so,
the requirement for the state to recognize the city's role and to listen to what that city thinks, they definitely need to open up their ears a little bit more. I think that's important, right?
Right. And I think it requires some business acumen, and I think it requires some negotiation skills. And I think when any municipalities, cities, counties, or anything, when they get too backed up with politicians who have a political investment in it, and maybe they want to move to some different offices, then I don't think that the negotiation process is leveraged is to the true capabilities that it can be from an outsider that's coming in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about a little bit leadership, right? So how do you define leadership in the context of public service, and what personal experiences have kind of shape your understanding of how leaders in the public sector are supposed to act, or what are their how do you define it? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah. So good leadership is more we and less me. Okay. And so I am from all the coaching I've done and business I've done. I am a lead from behind person, and let everybody else think that they're leading, or let them take a leadership role, and let them have credit for it. I think a leader, results should show what a leader does, not the leader calling out what he's done. Mm-hmm. And I think the more that we can let our people develop their own solutions and take the lead on the credit rather than me or anybody else, then it becomes a way healthier environment. Mm-hmm. In a lot of situations, you have, like in cities where you have the politicians don't really do any of the dirty work, right? But they take all the credit for it. But you have all these
sometimes
you have city managers and public works and all these other people that are really doing the day-to-day grind. And my role is to let them do the job that they're trained to do, that their education provides them to do, and then also let them have the credit. Mm-hmm. I think that people vote on what they see overall, and they're smart enough to see through somebody that says, I did this, I did this, I did this. So my leadership skill is, what do we have to do to develop, to bring on board the best possible team, whether it's consultants, whether they're paid, whether they're not. And I hope they're all smarter than me, and I hope that they're all superior to me, and I'm comfortable enough in my own skin to allow them to do that. And maybe a better leader than me will come along out of that pocket of people.
Yeah, it's a tough, being the mayor, you're a leader of the paid, employees that are doing the work. You're a leader of the city council, and then you're leading the city, right? You're a voice for the constituents that put you there, right? And so balancing those three things, it's a challenging job.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Do you believe leadership requires absolute consistency, like unwavering resolve in making decisions, or is flexibility and pragmatism more valuable or more important?
So I'm a super pragmatic person. Like, everybody will tell you that I'm probably pragmatic to a fault, right? And I try to always err on away from myself. And so I do think that it provides that it requires consistency, but it also requires enough self-security to change that direction. Because what's happening, especially in hurricane, it's going so fast that you can be consistent to the time, you can be consistent to today, but tomorrow there may be a change that requires you to take a different direction. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to be able to express that to people. Like, here is how we have done this to this point, but now we've realized that there is another path that we're required to take, or is a better path for all of you. And I think a lot of times we lack in pushing information, and we make people go look for the information. And then that also allows for a bigger gap of misinformation to be spread.
And what do you mean about that? Like, what information, in what context? Like, what specifically are you meaning about?
Well, we have so much technology, right? Mm-hmm. I was fortunate enough to come up through that technology where I grew as the technology grew. But people that are a little older than me, they're scared to death of that technology, right? They may do Facebook or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that I know that I've been in a couple of cities where they haven't utilized that technology in their favor by making everything public. Mm-hmm. from a push standpoint that people can get, rather than it's all on our website, or you can get it with a grandma request, or you can get, no. If we're transparent, okay, and also in that transparency, there's room for our own growth. Mm-hmm. And so when you have 20,000 constituents, those 20,000 people are way smarter than I am. And so the best ideas for the community and how we move forward, hopefully, is going to come out of that 20,000 people.
Yeah.
And so we need to use social media, YouTube, Facebook, and just put the information out there. Don't make the people go try to Google search it or go try to find it on a website. I don't think that's the right approach.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch government's requirement in communicating evolve, right? Is that, for a long time, it was a natural way that newspapers, journalism, those investigative type jobs were the check to that governmental structure, right? The government wasn't necessarily requiring to say and do everything they're going to do. They're like, we do it. If you want to pay attention, here's public, here are the public comments, here are the public hearings, you gotta come here to find it. The journalists would go to it, and then they disseminate it out to the working public, right? It's like, they don't have time to go to every single public meeting, right? I know there's been a small group of people that don't like when the county commissioners meet because it's in the middle of the day, and there's people that work and they can't always make that, right? And so that push for government to be more open and more, transparent about things is a building. It seems like it's a building conversation. You feel the same way?
That's like a double-edged sword, right? Like, I feel like the best the communication time that our country has ever had was when I was a kid, and I would watch my grandfather open a newspaper every day, right? And there was Disney and Wild Kingdom on right after that, right? People that you could trust, that were transparent. And so I think there is an intentional lack of transparency sometimes from our counties and our cities. And it doesn't have to be nefarious. It's just, I think they don't want to hear what people say sometimes, or they know it's a hot topic, or they know it's an issue. And so that transparency, that it doesn't spill over into technology the way that it should be. You think we had more valid information when we had newspapers than to think we have today. That's backwards.
Yeah, it's not actually true, right? Yeah, that's not it. So you were talking about the community, right? The knowledge base of the community. And so when you're thinking about what role does community input play in your decision-making process, how do you weigh it against your own judgment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So my judgment as a mayor, a nonpartisan position that represents constituents, my judgment should be the last thing that I go to. Okay. If you're a police officer and you cannot represent everybody equally, even people you may not agree with, or another criminal who's done something, or what, then you shouldn't be a police officer, right? And so my job as a mayor, or even a leader of a company, is different. A leader of a company, you can impart more of what you think. My job as a mayor is to represent the people. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot of times where there's a disagreement in what I really feel needs to be done and what the people need to be done. Couple of the things that I've been saying right away is I would assemble a committee, a voluntary committee of seniors and a voluntary committee of families, moms and dads, because there feels like there's a big disconnect there. But from having meetings on the street, they have the same concerns. Both of them do. And so you let the information filter up, and then you rely on your people, could be the city council, could be the commissions or whatever, and then you come to a consensus. As a mayor, I feel like my job is more like a referee, and to bridge differential thought processes and bring to light some things that people may not be thinking of, like a council, like reaching across an aisle, right? Mm-hmm. Like, well, maybe you didn't think about this. Mm-hmm. It happens to me every day. When I interact with people and I bring something up that I think we all agree on. and they have a different thought. It just happened to me yesterday from a nurse, and she had a whole different thought process than mine. And it made me think, wow, like I thought we were solid on, like I thought you could just take this to the bank, and it wasn't so.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was it?
So one of the concerns that I have right now is a lack of affordable housing for families and a lack of daycare, right? And I think that there's hidden things that go on. So for instance, Hurricane right now, the number is about 1,100 Airbnbs. And some of those Airbnbs are really high density housing disguised as Airbnbs. If you tried to push that same architectural design through to the citizens and said, we're going to use this as, family housing, they would have a conniption. They wouldn't allow it, right? And in Hurricane, you can live in an RV full time in an RV resort. And that's not what those were intended for. And so I was talking to this nurse and I'm like, for instance, do you know that you can live at Jellystone or any RV resort in Hurricane full time? You don't even have to move your RV anymore. That's just where you can live. And I had this whole thought process about how that was going to negatively, impact. And she says, what if you wanted to live in an RV?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's a valid point. Like snowbird, yeah. You want to travel around and live in an RV? Yeah. But if they're living in an RV with their family because we have not given them another option, that's bad. And so that whole thought process started going of who would want to live in an RV to some people do.
Yeah.
Right.
And my wife wants to live in an RV. And she tells me every day.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Right. That's valid. But my immediate mindset went to, well, in California, everybody can live in an RV on the street, in a park, by the beach, no wheels, no tires, whatever you want. And they don't tow it. They don't do. And so I was just thinking, besides the tax ramifications and the lack of revenue that for the city and a bunch of other stuff that is really down into the weeds, she just made me have a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that would make me approach what I thought totally different.
And this is an interesting stat because I just heard this and I think it might help you continue to evolve this opinion about affordable housing. And I don't want to get into your specific thoughts and strategies because I know it can be tough to be pinned down to one because it is very complicated. There's no silver bullet for affordable housing. And I think any politician that comes in is like, I got the answer. They're lying because they don't. And there's a lot of smart people that are working on this that aren't politicians, right? That are trying to figure out how do we navigate this. But only 23% of all Washington County has more than 3 individuals living in a dwelling. 23% of all the dwellings have more than 3 people living in it full time.
You could look at that a lot of different ways. Right.
So more than 3. So it's a single individual or a couple or not living in it full time. It's a second home, right? So that's 77% of the dwellings in Washington County have 1 or 2 people living in it, or they don't live in it full time.
Right.
And so when we think about like, how did we get here?
Right.
Why are families living in RVs? It's because the dwellings are owned by single individuals and couples and second homeowners and vacation rentals, right? Like that's
hedge funds.
That's the big, and not that's not necessarily fully true. I think if you were to look at even statewide, I've seen the data on statewide, single family home ownership is vast. The vast majority of them are owned by individuals. It's like 63% in the state of Utah. Single family residences are owned by individuals. And
not groups.
Not groups. And then there's a certain percentage that are LLCs. And then there's about 2 to 3% that are would be considered investment capital groups, right? Private venture funds. It's like 2 to 3% of the homes in Utah. So that's not necessarily true of Southern Utah. But the point still remains is like when we think about affordable housing and people living in RVs, the vast majority of the people are coming and doing rock, paper, scissors and buying a house. You know what I mean? And not everybody's living in that home. It's a couple or retired or, and so how do we dig ourselves out of that? Because it's a lot of it's by design. The city long time ago decided tourism and vacations were going to be a big bulk of how we grew as a city, and that's what they did, and it's what we've got so far, right? And so how do we navigate? How do we grow out of that, right? How do we go from our infant stage of being a wide spot in the road to now we're a full-blown city, and how does that impact it? So I just wanted to leave you with that because I thought that was such a crazy thought to be like the dwellings, like only 23% of the people are families.
Right.
Really. You know what I mean? And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
no, I mean,
I think it's,
my wife asked me, I met with the Washington County Board of Realtors yesterday and my wife asked me, is this all worth it? Right. And I'm like, I have learned really so much from this process. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think the fact that I can grow and learn from it, whether I'm the mayor or not, it's a positive, right? And I do have thoughts on that. And I include like a hedge fund with groups and LLCs and all that. But I do know this because the town I grew up in started at 7,100 people, and it's over 400,000 now.
Yeah.
And I do know that you're exactly right. If a politician tells them, and I hear this all the time in Hurricane, we're not going to let them grow. We're going to stop the growth. We're not going to let them do this. We're not going to let them do that. I haven't changed the master plan. A rezone is worse than a master plan change because it's an overlay, right? There's no way to stop it because the state will force it and then the feds will force it. And so I'm smart enough to know from my life experience that if you don't plan for it, then that's when it gets really ugly because you don't have it economically and socially zoned out. You don't have planned neighborhoods. And so we have to just accept that growth is inevitable. Look, we picked where we picked to live. All that open space isn't going to stay that way.
Yeah.
And so we need to plan it, have a great plan for it, and then work through that plan towards, there's a lot of great, I was up in American Fork this weekend. There's some beautiful planned neighborhoods up there. And then some of these mixed commercial, where they're doing commercial on the bottom and 2 apartments up top. I think those are fantastic for the community as well. And they would really have a hard time, what everybody says, becoming, like the projects or whatever else.
Yeah, it's tough to do. And what you build is what you get. And then there's redevelopment. And so I think a lot of times I think we underestimate the value in the redevelopment. And a lot of times redevelopment is hindered because of those zoning restrictions and ordinances and rules that were placed, 30, 40 years ago. And so re-looking at that in the redevelopment areas and saying, is there opportunity in the zone to help revitalize these areas, right? But this kind of segues to this conversation. What is the role of economic growth in a community's well-being, and how does it compare to other priorities like quality of life and cultural preservation? Make sense?
Yeah. So they're all intertwined, right? They're all, it's a circle. And that's what I'm talking about, like with zones and stuff. Like I'm not against an agricultural person selling their land and that becomes a housing tract or commercial or whatever they want. What I am against is people built a house, on a football field from the goal line to the 40 of each side, and then they put a Las Vegas style resort on the 50-yard line that overlooks those people's backyards. Like that's not acceptable. I'm for not trading what people thought might be a school for a commercial piece of property, because when people moved there, they were thinking this is where we can raise our kids and send them to school. So those are the kind of zone overlays that I think are damaging. From the economical standpoint you're talking about, we hear a lot of people say, my kids aren't here because they don't have jobs, or my kids aren't here because they can't afford a house, and so they're somewhere else, right? Having been in that position in the past when we were opening Home Depot stores, they won't come if they know they can't staff a store or they can't staff what they have. Yep. We can barely staff restaurants right now, and people get upset with that.
Yep.
And so until you can staff, which is housing, right? Then you're not going to get any quality company or business to come here. And we're at a time right now at a crossroads where we have to have them come, because we're going to run out of spaces. If a good company wanted to come here, right? Let's say Ford wanted to come here and build a factory or something, right? Good paying jobs.
Celine actually considered coming here before they went to Asheville.
You gotta have, Asheville's pretty. You gotta have a plan for them. Where, let's say that they came here fully staffed with 1,000 employees. All those employees need a place to live,
yep.
and they want to eat. And what cracks me up is we all just come to St. George.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a standard thing, right? We'll just go eat in St. George, or we'll just go to Tuacahn, or we'll just go. Don't build anything right here.
Yeah.
So it's all intertwined. We have to be able to support the employees, support the housing, and then obviously the growth in that will be able to support the financial needs of a business. But it's really about their employees and about where their employees are going to live.
Yeah. Do you think it's acceptable for a local government to prioritize economic growth over environmental protection?
No.
Okay.
No. I could be swayed on that. We just talked a minute ago about, is it my principles or what I believe is right, or what are there smarter people than me that can help me with that, right? And so, my immediate thing, because of how you put the question, you come across like protected land or turtles or tortoise or something. Hey,
if people listen to me, they're laughing right now. You're probably like, don't correct me on that. But yeah, I've gotten beat up by the whole tortoise turtle.
Listen, I'm from California. Anytime there's a tortoise involved, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because I've never seen a tortoise here. I've never even ran into one.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but
Red Mountain around like 7:00 in the morning. Go walk along, and you'll see them down there.
Really,
they're awesome. Yeah,
I mean, it would be cool to see one.
Yeah, yeah.
But what was your
Sky
question?
Mountain.
What was your question?
So thinking about it, is it ever acceptable to have economic growth trump that environmental protection? And when I think of environment, there's a couple of different things here. Is that you have pollution, you have water, you have land, you have in general, the environment is like the city that we live in, right? And so it's traffic could be considered, environmental protection. Like how do I prioritize this, right? And I think the reason I asked the question is because I want somebody to express like, okay, where do they draw these lines? Like from your perspective, where do you draw these lines between environmental protection and that economic growth? And in your vision, what does that line look like? Where does it drawn in the sand?
To me, the most important place to draw that would be at like a county level. Like who's protecting, who's considering this environmental protection, right? Because if the feds are considering it, half the time you can discard it. And then as it comes down, it gets more and more serious. And so from an environmental standpoint, there is a balancing act. Like it's so beautiful here, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's got to be a balance of, I think there's not a very good balance right now of colors and light pollution and stuff like that. That's just easily addressable, that most people would agree on, mm-hmm. that we haven't even attempted to keep that in check, sign ordinances and things like that. And I get the constitutionalists, right? Well, we have a right to do whatever we want, right? But there's mm-hmm. also an argument on the other side. Right. And so there's some basic things that I feel like that we failed on right around here. One of my biggest concerns that I would place on top of that, because I was looking at environmental, like more like a tortoise, what you were saying.
Yeah. I think that's the obvious one that comes across, but
is water,
mm-hmm.
right? We have a 20-year plan for water, and I'm comfortable in Washington County's assessment of water, and where I've listened to them. But I'm pretty sure that their assessment is based on a certain square footage of a home or a residential area, not a water park or a surf park neighborhood. Or some of these places, they evaporate 48 to 50,000 gallons a day. And so to me, the number one thing in environmental would be water, right? Who has the plan for water? What does that plan really entail? Like, I want to talk to Washington County and say, does it mean we can have 20 water parks? Does it mean we can continue to water the golf courses without recycled water? I mean, and I know they have plans for all that. So that's not the point. The point is what is the basis of their plan? Is it just based on population growth, or is it based on, a bunch of other things. So that would be my number one concern. And then I do feel that we have a obligation. I mean, I just came from a meeting where, people are upset about blasting and dust, and, the rate of valley fever in southern Utah is way higher than it is anywhere else. And so we do have some obligation to make sure that the air quality remains good. Anything that affects the health and kind of well-being, and isn't just we want to protect that because it was something. That's what I said. If the feds want to protect it, I look at that as like this big, and then as it comes down to your constituents, it gets a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. When their concerns get bigger, then my concerns should get bigger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So like what's the city's role in that? Like, do you feel like there's enough power in the city to control some of those environmental things, or is the only way to control it at the economic level and slowing down growth? Or if it's this development is moving and it blows wind and valley fever kicks up, do we what's the solution in there? I guess it's hard to navigate that.
I think I agree. It's hard to navigate. But I think that if you have let's just say, for lack of a better term, like the ordinance in place, or if you have the master plan and you have the zone, if you have a plan in place, mm-hmm. then the plan should have already taken into consideration for all that stuff. Yeah. And once again, this is why I say I'm not against rezoning in the aspect what you talk about, where we can't just leave everything ag, right? And so that's not bad. I'm talking about developers that control our city by coming in and they want to do, for lack of a better term, this is 4 houses on this piece of land, and then they want to put 8 houses on a piece of land, and then they start building their project probably on a PID loan, and then they come back and say, oh, no, we want to do 20 houses now. Those overlays and that continues. Washington County, nobody's taken that into consideration. And so I would be pretty much a hard no on a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Just follow what we have already. Follow the plan.
Yeah. And the adjustments, and this is just from my own experience, and not to say that this is the case, because I don't know hurricane enough, and I've looked at the general plan, the most recent general plan, and one of the biggest challenges I have is that as a general plan, it's very general, and where ag is, it's like, what are we going to put in that zone? It's like, well, single family residence for now, right? It's like, we're going to put it as a 1 level up zone from where it's at, versus saying the general overlays and say, in 30 years, we'd love it to look exactly like this, right? And I think that's where sometimes these general plans don't go long enough in their thought process. 20 years, 30 years, if you just look over the last 15 of St. George, things are going fast, right? And so was the plan thought through enough in that first general plan, and how long does it go before you reevaluate that general plan, right? I think it's 20 years typically. And so how do we look at it maybe a little bit more frequently, or not in a even longer term? It's like, let's look, what's 50 years look like? How detailed could we get on a planning side of things, even more detailed than, we don't want, this is the general plan and one day it might look like this, right? It's not easy.
I know how
you're asking to do a hard thing.
I know how we don't do it. We don't do it with guys my age.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Like, get some committees together, because if I'm making a decision for you or my kids, that's not going to be the right decision. If I'm making a decision for my grandkids, it's not going to be the right decision.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take people coming in and running for office or taking leadership roles that keep that. It's Gen Y and Z has to get involved and keep pushing forward, because I have a whole different view of what my world looks like. My grandparents said, your generation is going to ruin the world.
They were right. Dang it. Just kidding. I'm sorry.
The thing is I tell my wife this all the time. It's not my world anymore. Like, I'm on my way out, right? It's the next, if that's what they want their world to look like, it's their world.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good one to leave on. What other, is there anything we left on the table? Anything where you're like, hey, I want to make sure if somebody's listening to this, they don't get you on a meet and greet or something.
Yeah. So I think, you brought up ag, right? Uh-huh. And there's a couple of things that everybody's agreed on in a meet and greet. Affordable housing is one. housing insecurity, like getting priced out of their house by property tax or something else. Like the younger generation, I can't afford to get a house. The senior generation, my taxes are increasing. I'm going to get, my house is paid off, but I'm going to get priced out of my house. Mm-hmm. The other one is food insecurity, which is amazing on both ends, right? Mm-hmm. There's people that are your age or my kids' age that are food insecure, and seniors. And so we have all this dirt. And I know in Hurricane, there's guys like, Barney and Lofthouse. And these guys, if you give them a piece of dirt, they're going to put something on it, either beef or they're going to grow asparagus or something. That they just want the piece of dirt. And so I think that from an agritourism standpoint, that we can protect some land and let these guys develop it and use it to teach kids about that, and also use it to feed into our food banks, right? Because I've had some legacy families come up and say, I have 60 acres. Someone's knocking on my door, every day. And I'm like, let's make it agritourism zone. Let's teach the kids there. Yeah. It really plays into the LDS role also, because they used to have peach farms and everything. Yeah. And so
are you familiar with Staley Farm?
Yes, I think they just did that.
They're driving that, and then Switch Point, right, is a part of their vertical gardening. So we have like a little pockets of this growing, but I think it's a cool thing to like, how do we keep that one rolling? Because I think that's really interesting.
And I think if everybody can't come together on that,
that's a good one.
We're in trouble.
Okay, last question. What's your perspective on term limits?
Term limits.
At the city, state, federal,
the higher up you get, when there's more staff, there's more support, there's more representation, the shorter the term limits should get, right? Mm-hmm. I think that if you take some cities, I think it's on a 7-person council, term limits can be shorter as well, right? I'm all for term limits. I think it's the definition of where you draw the term limit line to keep enough experience in to bring on board the newer candidates. But I think the newer candidates are what keeps everything fresh. Like we talked about earlier, like the younger generation, right? Mm-hmm. But every aspect of our life, we're better with mentors, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you have a big enough council to where you could provide mentorship and you can, split it where, 2 years for 3 and 2 years for another 4 people.
It's kind of set up that way too, right? It's like every couple of years there's 3, right? 2 years ago it was 3 city council members. This year it's a mayor and 2 city council members. So there's a 2-year gap in there.
Right. I don't know where the line is. I think that we should have them at like I said, at a city level. But I definitely know the more you get up and there's more support, then the shorter those term limits should be. There should be no career politicians. My personal standpoint, I'm going to do 1 term. I'm going to do 4, and I'm going to pass it on to someone else that's better than me. And that's there's obviously somebody should be better than me. Every 4 years, we should have somebody that could come forward that is smarter than the other person that just did 4 years.
Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree with you on that. Yeah. But I appreciate the perspective. Okay. Yeah. Well, where can they find more information? I got your social media here. Rick Crow for mayor. Do you have a website?
Yeah, everything is pretty much Crow for Change. It's Crow for Change on YouTube.
4, the number 4, right?
Yeah, Crow for Change on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Okay.
Or they can just find me. My telephone number is listed everywhere. I've been getting a lot of texts, and I answer those texts.
Cool.
And we're not holding meet and greets at like the library. We're going out into the neighborhoods and just setting up a table on the corner, which is the same thing I would do as a mayor.
That's awesome. So look out for your signs. Come and check it out. And then for everybody else, go to votestg.com. We're covering Ivan, Santa Clara, St. George, Washington, and even Hurricane. You can go to one spot, votestg.com, and get all the information you need to know about the candidates. We have a survey. We have the interviews selected there, so you guys can make the right choice for your cities. Let's get out the vote, guys, and we hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you out there. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.